If you want to get started selling on Amazon doing wholesale, or perhaps you're already starting, then you want to meet the visionary behind someone doing 65 million a year and over 300,000 orders a month. Stay tuned. I think you're going to learn a lot. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day. If anyone doesn't know who you are, can you share a little bit of an overview about yourself and your journey in Amazon seller so far?
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. It's always a pleasure connecting, and I'm excited to provide a lot of value. A little bit about myself. I've been selling on Amazon for about 10 years now. We just had our 10-year anniversary a couple days ago, which was super cool. Spending the time with our staff and just really appreciating them for all the hard work they put in. Because of my experience and my level of expertise, I've created consulting programs like Amazon Lit and eSellers RI and our Inner Circle, where we essentially guide, 6, 7, and 8-figure Amazon sellers on their journey to expedite their growth, grow profit margins, grow revenue, grow sales, build teams and infrastructures within their company. Both businesses are thriving, like you said at the beginning, our Amazon business, we're doing about 65 mil a year, and Amazon Lit, our consulting company, we've helped thousands and thousands of people grow their businesses as well.
Oh my God, super impressive. And I know, obviously, we've spoken before many times. I know about your journey. You started off pretty much selling in your basement, wasn't it? Yourself and Sebastian. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey? Just give us a quick run through from basement to where you are now, 65 million a year. That's incredible.
Yeah, definitely didn't happen overnight. Sebastian is my business partner and also my best friend. He started in 2013, just going to Sam's Club, Costco, BJ's, essentially doing retail arbitrage. And it started off FBM, and then once he made the switch to FBA, sales 10 to 15x overnight, and he really saw the opportunity there. And we operated out of that basement for probably 12 to 15 months, going to stores every day and doing the retail arbitrage hustle, which I know a lot of you are very familiar with.
Today, I'd like to really talk about kind of like 4 key areas. So operations, challenges, mindset. I know you're a big believer in that, learning and development, and then also like the future of where you're going. If you're going to dump into like operations first, one area that I'm really interested to understand more about is like wholesale product sourcing and selection. Can you tell us a little bit about like how you approach product selection from wholesalers and manufacturers? Like what are your criteria that you're considering and looking at?
Yeah, so for when it comes to opening wholesale accounts, typically I'm just looking for brand name products. The way I like to describe it is, I'm sure a lot of us have walked into a CVS or a Walgreens or a Rite Aid. Like all of those products that you see in the aisles are the products that I'm looking for when I open up a wholesale account. So if the company has access to those products, I want to create an account. I want the catalog so I could then review pricing. It doesn't matter if they have the products if they're not competitively priced. Once we have pricing, then we're able to use what I like to call our buying prerequisites. Like, for example, let's say your minimum cutoff is $3 gross profit, right? You can upload that catalog to a UPC scraper like Scan Unlimited, Tactical Arbitrage, our own Source Correct, and you could begin sorting through that data and picking out those winning products that are going to drive the minimum profits that you're expecting to purchase at.
That process is, and if I understand correctly, you're speaking to a wholesaler, you're getting their list, and you're running it through that software. You're looking at, say, $3 minimum. What do you do next? What does that look like after that?
Yeah, so it's a tedious process, right? And this is why a lot of these companies and newer sellers, they either give up or they quit or they don't really hit the revenue projections that they were expecting to hit. Is because they're not willing to put in the work. Sorting through an 80,000 line item catalog that after you upload to the UPC scraper still has 3,000 items on it is a very tedious process. So we're sorting typically from highest profit first, right? Which will, when you're sorting by highest profit first, Tom, you'll typically find your slower moving ASINs with higher BSRs, 150K ranks, 120K ranks, but the margins are much higher. So we focus on buying those first, and then we work our way all the way down that catalog until we hit that threshold of $3 or $2.50 or $3.50, whatever it is for you. For us, it's right around $3. Until we hit that threshold, we're going through all those products and we're adding them to an order if they make sense based on keep analyzation, competitor in stock, reviews and feedback of the sellers we're competing with. We're analyzing a multitude of scenarios when we're making these educated buying decisions.
In the supplier relationship side, I think, you've talked a lot about building relationships and like having really strong relationships. Like, tell me about that. Like, why does that matter? I know a lot of people are just like contact, scan, no, don't care. Like, what's the importance about building a strong supplier relationship?
Yeah, because the way I see it, it's like any relationship, right? I'm sure you have close friends and whether, male, female, doesn't matter, right? You have these close relationships and those people prioritize your relationship because you've harvested it. You've showed that you respect the relationship, right? And it's a two-way street. It's not just one-sided where you're take. No, it's take, give, and then gain. So I'm a firm believer of attending trade shows frequently, emailing these companies, learning about them as individual, when their birthday is, what's their religion, so I can wish them a happy holiday on whatever holiday that they practice, inviting them to lunch or dinner, right? So treating them like a human being instead of just a business is super important when we're thinking of harvesting these relationships.
Do you have any examples of where you've done that and it's actually like really paid off?
Yeah, absolutely. So Sebastian, he's actually my business partner. He's at a trade show right now from a company that we've been harvesting a relation, and it's a private trade show, very different than the ones open to the public. It's a private trade show hosted by the company for its vendors and customers only. And he got an invite because we've been harvesting this relationship for 4 or 5 years. We spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in inventory. Any trade show they're at, we always stop by and say hello. They're coming to our warehouse next week for a visit. So we're going to sit down with them, buy them lunch, and talk about the future growth of the company. So we're invested in those relationships, Tom.
One thing that you talked about a lot, and I've seen it on, she said, I'm part of the eSellers RI course. I paid for that. It's an amazing resource. You talked about like understanding body language when you're having these conversations. Tell me about that. Why is that important?
Yeah, so I think understanding body languages as well as mirroring body language is very important to harvesting these relationships, because if someone's like arms crossed or hands in pockets, you can tell that they're closed off to you, right? So you don't want to be super aggressive with that type of person because they already have a boundary set in place. So your goal is to kind of break that boundary. And if they're super happy and excited and joking around, mirroring that same energy and being happy and excited and joking around will allow you to push that conversations to new levels and new levels of communication, which will in turn open up potential new opportunities and not only getting to know the person better, but potential deals or discounts or information that they weren't quite ready to share prior to you opening up and matching their energy.
Like one of the big things you talk about is like get on the phone and have a conversation, get off the emails. And I've seen a wonderful short recently about a VA email that you had coming to your business to open up a supply account, which I love. Like, how do you talk about like tone of voice, body language through telephone calls? How do you manage that situation?
Yeah, it's a little tougher to do it over phone because you can't see the person physically, and body language plays a huge role in understanding how to communicate with people. So typically on a phone call, I just like to keep it business. And obviously, same thing. You can understand with their tone of voice if they're having a bad day and if they're open to answering certain questions just by how they answer the phone, right? You could tell if they're rushed or maybe they stepped out of a meeting to take that phone call. So there's a time and a place based on their tone of voice and how they're interacting to kind of gauge how far you can go with the conversation on that phone call. Absolutely.
Do you have any like tips or tricks if people are struggling on that call, like that they can maybe use to help turn it around, improve it?
Yeah. So typically what I like to do is I like to, which most people don't consider, Tom, is asking the person on the other line if there's anything that they need done for them. Typically when you make these phone calls, it's, hey, can I get your catalog? Can I get a discount? Can I get 4 pallets of this? Instead of, hey, do you have any excess inventory you're trying to get rid of? Do you have any deals that are happening now where you're really trying to move out inventory to meet manufacturer requirements? Because I'm happy to assist you with that. So please, if you need anything moved out of your warehouse, send it my way. I'll take a look. And if I can move some of that inventory, I will for you. Right? So now you're not just taking, you're giving.
And I'm guessing you're building that relationship, aren't you? They're like, hey, I've got some other stuff I need to clear out cheap. I like these guys. I'll give them a call and say, do you want to take it? You talked about earlier, like the process of product selection. You talked about scanning through the software and, like you have like maybe 3,000 or an 80,000 list. One of the areas which I think is a big problem, especially whether it be OA or wholesale, is around pricing and particularly around the competitive nature of the Amazon marketplace. How do you deal with approaching pricing, maybe initial orders, maybe reordering when we are are in a competitive marketplace?
Yeah, so typically when I'm analyzing for a new purchase, I'm looking at the lowest consistent buy box price. If I'm looking at a year of Keepa data and the price drops for a week or two to a low price that I'm unprofitable, typically I'll ignore that. It's what we consider an outlier. So I'm looking at the lowest consistent buy box price, and if I'm profitable at that price, even if it's a little less than my $3 requirements, I will still purchase that inventory, assuming that it will sell at the more consistent higher price based on the data.
Okay, cool. I like that. And that's kind of like, what's the worst case scenario, normal worst case scenario, as you say, and then like that works for me, cool, I like that product. You've talked about it previously. I think you referenced somewhere, Q4, Amazon increases its fees. It costs you like $75,000 just do exactly the same thing because of the increased fees. Like, how do you manage that? Like, obviously, especially with the change in pricing, how does that impact your business and how do you manage it?
Yeah, it's actually probably closer to six figures. And those fees are storage fees. So Amazon has about a 3.5, 3.8x on their storage fees in Q4 to kind of eliminate people from just sending in a bunch of inventory and it collecting dust. I understand why they do it, but you're right. It does add an additional expense to our company, anywhere from $60,000 to $75,000 a month. But the way we manage that is we understand that Q4 also has about a 30% increase in sales revenue, as well as about a 30% increase in profit. So it all equals out in the end, and we actually come out on top, although those fees have increased for us.
Are there any products whereby they don't increase in Q4 and maybe you reduce them down because of that impact, or are you pretty much all year round the same?
No, so the storage fee increases across the board for every single product.
In regards to your business, my God, you're doing 67 last 12 months, 300,000 units per month, which is incredible. Can you tell me a bit about like the tools, the systems, and even the processes you have in place that enable you to operate efficiently? Because if you don't, your costs are going through the roof.
It's essentially 3 or 4 main positions at my company that manage the day-to-day operations. You have pickers and packers, which are essentially the warehouse staff, right? They're the people who are picking the pallets, bringing them to the production stations, and then the packers are the ones packaging, making the 3-packs, the 6-packs, the 9-packs, putting the risk of suffocation labels, the FN SKUs, the expiration dates. So that's one position, or essentially 2, we'll call it, pickers and packers. The third position that is required in our business and most businesses, as you know as well, because I know you sell on Amazon, is a buyer, right? You need someone to be able to purchase the inventory, because if they're not buying the inventory, then there's nothing to do for the pickers and the packers. The buyers feed the pickers and the packers. If the buyers aren't buying, the rest of the business isn't operating. And then the fourth position would be management, right? So you need to implement, at least in our case, at our scale, we had to implement management to kind of guide those positions to make sure that they're hitting those daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly goals that we expect them to hit.
You talk about those weekly, monthly, daily, quarterly goals. Can you give us like an insight to like, what are they? What are you tracking and why those numbers?
Yeah, so it's different based on the position. So for example, our buyers have a quarterly profit goal, right? Because they could purchase 1 million ASINs. A lot of people incentivize their team through how many ASINs someone finds or how many accounts they open. But the way I see it is, I don't care how many ASINs they find. I don't care how many accounts they open. If those accounts and ASINs aren't making my company profit, then I'm not paying them any bonuses, right? They are incentivized based on profit growth. So the way we do it is we analyze previous quarter profits and we set new requirements for profits. So let's just say, example, Q2, the buyer who manages 2 suppliers did $50,000 in profit. For me, in Q3, I can't set a requirement of $50,000. That's no growth. So we'll do a 10% increase and say, hey, your new goal for Q3 for these 2 vendors is $55,000 in profit. Anything over that, we will pay you a percentage of.
You have buyers. You said maybe one of them's looking after 2 suppliers, for example, or vendors. How do you separate? How do you, should we say, divide up the business into different segments? What does that look like? What's your criteria for it?
Yeah, performance. It's all performance based, right? So the buyer that's producing the most profits will typically get the best suppliers because they have the highest skill set necessary to produce the profits that's required to continue to grow the company.
Fantastic. And you have each buyer is generally one or multiple vendors. And I'm guessing do you have vendors crossover buyers, or is it always segregated?
Yeah, no, there's vendors that cross over buyers, and our buyers manage multiple vendors at a time. And the way we operate, like let's say you have a SKU from one vendor and now you're bringing it in from another vendor, typically we'll allocate that profit to whichever vendor has the higher amount of inventory, because not many systems operate on like a first in, first out method.
Yeah, no, I understand that. You obviously you started out the entire journey in your basement, and now you're obviously in a warehouse, and I think obviously recently a new warehouse. Obviously, I see a lot of the shorts, so I honestly love that. Can you talk about some of the changes which have allowed that efficiency? Like, and I'm sure a lot of people aren't in the big warehouse now; they're in the basement going into the first warehouse. Tell me about that. Like, what have you done systems-wise?
First of all, there's a lot of fear involved and hesitancy, especially early on, because you're taking this when you're going from that basement to your first 1,000 or 1,500 square foot warehouse. You're taking on new expenses. Most likely you'll need some employees to help out. You got to have insurance. Like all these new things come into play. And that could be very scary, especially because most Amazon business owners never owned a business before. So it's tough to kind of get that vision and be like, I'm going to take on these expenses and it's going to grow. But I think what's most important, especially early on, is really building out systems. Having dedicated spaces in your warehouse for shipping, receiving, packing. Because in the early beginnings, we just did whatever. It helped us grow, but it didn't really build out any infrastructure at our company, Tom.
I know that one in mine. I've grown with no systems and it's been a disaster. And then you fall back down and then you start building again with systems. Right, I just want to take a minute out of the interview to say that building a team, building a scalable business is hard work. And even this is when we are working 12 to 15 hours per day. Now, what have some people done? They've started to build a team, just like Eric, just like many other sellers, they have built a team. Now, within my business and many other businesses that I've seen, they've actually used virtual assistants, VAs, to help them build this team. And this can be game changing. Why? They are significantly lower cost of labor than, should we say, hiring onshore in the US or the UK, but also as well, they can do a lot of the work for you, like administrative, maybe deal analysis to start off with, sometimes even purchasing. Now, if you're interested in learning how a VA can add value to your business, I've recorded a video called How a VA Can Add $10,000 per month to your business. This is something that I've seen in my business and many other people. I'll drop a link down below. Check that out. I think you're going to love it. Right, back to the interview. Question for you. Obviously, I know it, and I think it's a good time to ask. In eSellers RI, you have like a very, very premium level whereby you go and meet people and actually help put these systems into the warehouse. Could you tell me about that?
Yeah, so it's called Inner Circle, and there's 3 different tiers, and each tier gets a different level of access. So what we do, typically, it's reserved for businesses that meet 3 requirements. The first requirement is you have to be a member of eSellers RI. Right? Because that's where you find the fundamentals and build the infrastructure. Second requirement is you have to do at minimum 7 figures in annual sales. And the third requirement is you must be an awesome candidate, right? We don't want anybody bringing the morale down. And what we do is we work exclusively with you one-on-one. We come visit your space. We train your buyers. We help you optimize your systems and grow profits.
You've been in business now coming up 10 years, and obviously congratulations. Amazon has changed dramatically in those 10 years. How have you adapted to that change? Like, what do you do to kind of make sure that your business continues to grow and doesn't go the wrong way?
Yeah. So I think one of the huge things that we do that really separates us from most companies is we're on top of the information, right? If Amazon's releasing a new program, we're the first person to participate in. If Amazon's changing their fee structures, we're the first people to make those according changes on our Amazon listings to account for those fee changes, right? For example, small and light, it's being removed. We've been talking about it in eSellers RI for 3 months now, ever since it dropped. Right. So everybody who's around us is also very savvy on those changes, and they're making and implementing and maneuvering properly way before any other Amazon seller is. So we're staying ahead of the curve consistently.
My God, we get so caught up in the day-to-day operations. We're not, we need to plan for the business today and the business tomorrow. 2 kind of hats. You recently moved into a new warehouse. Can you tell me a bit about the decision-making process in why you moved and why that warehouse? What were the considerations?
Yeah, so we've actually been shopping for a new warehouse for about 18 months. Very tedious process. We visited probably 30 or 40 warehouses in our area. And the reason why we needed a new warehouse is because we were bursting at the seams at our last space. space. Our last space had about 25,000 square foot of warehouse space. And we knew that we just couldn't continue to grow in there because it's something I like to call the apex, right? You think of a parabola, kind of an upside down half circle. And at the top is the apex, which is like you can't move anymore once you reach the apex. Your employees are bumping into each other. You just can't produce enough inventory to sustain growth. So the goal is before you hit the apex, you want to find a new location. And we were right at that apex in our last location. And we needed to find a larger space. And after searching, like I said, 25, 30 spaces, this one just really stood out. It had an open floor plan. It had multiple dock doors. It was really optimized for growth, and it's about 60,000 square feet.
Seriously big increase. 60,000 square foot, definitely not a 60,000 square foot basement. Like the roles change. You've got 4 roles and you've got management now as well. But how has your role and you say Sebastian's role changed since the basement to today? Like what's different about what you're doing now and how's that transitioned over time?
So in the beginning, we were all those 4 positions I covered before. We were all of them. We were the pickers, the packers, the buyers, the management. Like we did all that for multiple years, right? And I encourage, especially if you're just getting started and you're listening to this, that you do that as well, because it's going to teach you the fundamentals and the infrastructure of Amazon, and it's going to make you much better situated to be able to train a team, right? And as the years go on, I was able to delegate a lot of those daily tasks, like first of all, picking and packing and then buying to other hired employees, right? To free up my time and focus on business growth. And now for me, what business growth is the higher level things, focusing on repricing of some of our products that are making us the most profit, or the products that we have a lot of excess inventory of, traveling the country, meeting with the vendors, building and harvesting existing relationships and building new relationships to get access to new inventory. That's really my primary focus now. And then also overseeing those 4 different positions that we now have other employees managing on the day-to-day basis.
I love it. And so you step out, and then does Sebastian look after the operations side, or how does it work between you two?
Yeah, so Sebastian has actually been super heavy in web development for the past 3 years, building our own in-house inventory management system, our own in-house ERP and repricer. He's been super focused for the past 3 years, building out a team of developers, some in-house, some overseas, to really increase our efficiency.
Yeah, my God, I certainly understand that one. It's like focus, try and improve the 1%. I'd like to move on to challenges. You obviously you're called Amazon Lit. Have you ever do you ever think about outside of Amazon, diversification off that? What are the thoughts for yourself? Like even Walmart?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've sold on many marketplaces over the years, eBay, Walmart. We allocated not only a lot of employee time, but also a lot of our time into building those out. And at the end of the year, because we did it maybe 3 or 4 years in a row, once we reviewed all the data at the end of the year, we realized that the profits we were making from FBA Wholesale were much higher and much more sufficient and much more sustainable than the time we were allocating to those other marketplaces. We always make decisions on data, Tom. Data runs our decision making. And based on the data, we decided to completely eliminate those other marketplaces and go 100% all in on Amazon.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing that I've learned in business. Focus. And it's really about leverage. What result can I get for the least amount of time? And generally, that's the bigger issue. I'd like to talk about the hurdle around people getting into wholesale, already in wholesale right now. It's becoming more and more competitive. My God, your Instagram's blowing up, YouTube's blowing up, everything's doing really well. But more and more people are getting this. How are you dealing with supplier relationships in like when every man and his VA are contacting all the wholesalers and distributors and manufacturers now? How do you deal with that?
I really don't even think about it. I don't consider it, because one thing I know about people is most of them will fail. And that says a lot about the human race in general. You know, most people are not go-getters. They are quitters. So they may sell on Amazon for 6 to 12 months, but I'm banking on them giving up, because that's what most people do, because they don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the training, they don't have the guidance to continue along their path and their journey that they're expecting. Right? So usually a bump in the road happens and they give up. So although all these new companies are coming to creation and opening up accounts, they will have a short lifespan, and we will just continue to dominate, right? And also teach other sellers how to dominate so they can be long lasting.
it seems like, was it 95% of all businesses fail within 5 years? It's an incredible, statistically speaking,
like that. Yeah.
Stay in your job. It's a lot more efficient. I'd like to move on to like mindset and personal. Now, obviously, I've met you personally quite a few times, actually. I'd love to learn about you on a personal level, like challenges you've faced. What have you faced in your journey, and like, you've overcome that? Maybe it's in Amazon or even outside of Amazon that shaped your mindset and belief in business.
Yeah. So something I suffer from, Tom, is I have a very addictive personality. So about a decade ago, that addictive personality was funneled into drugs and alcohol, right? And I almost ruined my life because of it. And then once I stopped the drinking and the drugging, which has been many, many years now, it switched over to gambling. And this is all prior to finding like business success. And then once I found and was creating my own businesses, I got very addicted to that and went all in, 12, 15-hour days, 7 days a week, like just grind. So although that addictive personality, it kind of drove me down in my early 20s, what I was using it for, the negative, the alcohol, the gambling, the drugs, that addictive personality has allowed me to succeed in business. I just had to channel it correctly into the positive instead of the negative.
I think it's amazing. And like, I've met so many people who've become really successful but come from really difficult backgrounds, and I think massive well done to you, and absolutely love it. And I know like when we first met in Houston, I think there's like a problem with like walking and your foot, and I remember that, and like you've been through the war. There's a massive respect to where you are now and going through, and it's like dedication, head down, go. You talked about it earlier, or like, should we say, coming on to that, like I've met you at lots of events. Some of them I didn't even expect to see you there, but and I know obviously through your Instagram, you are a big believer in investing in networks, education. Why? You spend a lot of money on it, by the way. Why do you do that?
Yeah, I do it because I don't know what I don't know. And when you don't know what you don't know, it's tough to really create a future and a vision for yourself because you're missing a few of the crucial pieces. So instead of figuring it out for myself, which I did for maybe the first 6 or 7 years in business, I only recently, maybe 3 years ago, really started investing in myself through educations, masterminds, inner circles, courses, trainings. And now I spend about 6 figures a year on investing in those. But the reason why is because I don't want to know the how. I want to know the who, right? Who can show me the how of what I need to accomplish and get done, right? And that's why I've seen you at so many events, because I'm always investing in myself, and you do the same, Tom.
And do you have any examples of like things that you've learned where you're like, I didn't even know that I didn't know that?
One would be just charging higher prices, right? Because if someone's willing to pay $1,000, they'll pay $3,000 as long as the value is there, right? Which is a huge component that a lot of people miss out on. A lot of people hear, oh, I can raise my prices. They raise their price, but then they under-deliver on the value. So something I learned is if you have a value product that people are interested in and have purchased and gotten results from, then I should not be uncomfortable with raising the price of that product to meet the needs of the customer.
I'd like to bring it back to, you talked earlier on about networking. You're going to private events, and particularly around like trade shows. I know this is something that you hammer home, go to trade shows. Why? Like, why are they so beneficial? Why can I not sit there at home and just click away and send emails, maybe even get on the phone? Why trade shows?
Yeah, because we kind of touched on it a little bit in the beginning of the call, body language, right? You're no longer just someone behind an email address or behind a phone call. You are now a person who they see their face, they're able to shake your hand, physically see you. It completely changes the whole relationship building aspect. Think about it like this: dating online versus meeting someone for the first time on a coffee date. Big difference, right, Tom? Big difference.
What's it called? Catfishing, I think it is. Right? Yeah, we know that one.
You can be anybody behind a computer, but once you kind of meet someone in person, your true colors show.
No, I understand that. And like, have you got any advice for people who like maybe going to the trade show for the first time? Like, what kind of tips and tricks can you recommend?
Get out of your comfort zone. You're going to be talking to a lot of people. You definitely want to wear comfortable walking shoes. And the things I'll describe first are things to get you to not be thinking about you, right? So, for example, comfortable walking shoes, something to write on, mints, because you're going to be talking in close proximity. Wear something comfortable. If you don't wear a suit every day, don't wear a suit to the trade show. Because when you're walking the floor, all you're going to be thinking about is how your breath smells and you're wearing a suit, right? You're not going to be thinking about the relationship. So Just get uncomfortable and also find a buddy. I love to bring a buddy to a trade show because I might not be feeling it that day. But hopefully the buddy I'm walking the show floor with is a little more motivated than me, and I can thrive off of their energy.
No, I love it. And I know you do like walk around with like ASD and stuff, don't you, in like the community. So honestly, super helpful there. You, like on a personal level, your addictive personality, 12, 15 hours a day. And I think, hey, let's not lie. Like if you want to get into business, that's what you got to do a lot of the time. But like, tell me about work-life balance. Tell me about like how you balance that. Because obviously you have a life outside. I've met your girlfriend.
Yeah. So I'm just recently learning about the whole work-life balance, not just learning about it, but implementing it. Right. So I went to Mexico with Catherine, who my girlfriend's family, about 2 months ago. And her brother-in-law and her sister are both doctors, and they have 4 kids together. Right. So they understand a lot more about work-life balance than I do because I don't have any children. So if I want to bunker down in the office for 16 hours, I can. Right. So I had an open line of communication with them on my recent trip, and they explained to me like the importance of setting aside time for yourself, right, to kind of focus on your emotions and your internal mindset and all of those things, which will make me a better business owner. But it's very tough to step away from the day to day and allocate the time to do so. But I've been doing it a lot recently, and I can tell you my day to day performance has greatly increased because of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's so important. And my God, I'm in Mexico right now. I certainly understand the Mexican culture. I'd love to move on to that, like the future. So you've been going 10 years now, 65,300,000 units a month, which is like insane. We talked about it early. Every man and his VA are contacting, wholesalers, more manufacturers, distributors, more and more people are getting into the game. Like, how do you see the wholesale game changing over the next 3 to 5 years? Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I think the wholesale space will remain very similar in the next 3 to 5 years. There'll be still a ton of opportunity. And then there's going to be some products that you buy and you break even or you make a loss on. But as long as the winners outweigh the losers, you can still win in the wholesale space, right? But a big shift I see happening in the next 3 to 5 years is some of these medium-sized brands going more exclusive with specific third-party sellers opposed to just having their products sold wholesale through distributors and wholesalers.
Okay, interesting. That's going to be an interesting trend coming up, isn't it? Obviously, now that's about building the relationship with those brands. What advice do you have for people who are, looking maybe to optimize, maybe scale their operation that you can give based on your experience and learnings?
Yeah, so I would be doing them a disservice if I didn't say it. But number one would be join these Sellers Ride if you're not in it. And number two is if you're already a 7-figure business owner or 8-figure business owner, join Inner Circle, right? Because we can literally guide you to that success. But the second thing would be to don't be scared to take risks in your company. Calculated risks, right? Hire that new employee. Something that's going to allow you to free up your time to focus on the higher level growth things like optimizing and training your team or focusing on harvesting new relationships. So you're not stuck in the day to day. Because if you don't break away from the shackles of the day to day, it's going to be nearly impossible to grow your business.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely love that. And you, for yourself, looking back on your journey, is there, if there was 1 or 2 things that you would have changed, what would they have been and why?
I probably would have brought on and paid a buyer a lot more money than I paid them early on to incentivize them to really focus on growing the business much sooner than I did, right? Because I think buying is the most important aspect of this business. If you're not buying properly, you do not have a business at all. I met this guy, Ernie, who's a local here. He owns a couple $100 million a year wholesale company. And about 5 years ago, he asked me, which was about 2 years too late, but he asked me, what do you pay your buyers? And I told him, and he said, you're not paying your buyers enough. They're the most important person in the company. You need to pay them more. And we started doing that, and it completely revolutionized the game for us.
Wow. And if anyone wants to get in contact with you, what's the best way?
Amazon Lit, Amazon_Lit, AmazonLit.com. Anything Amazon Lit. Send me a message on Instagram. Happy to respond. Check out our website, www.amazonlit.com. We got a ton of resources there. And we're here to guide you and assist you in profitable Amazon wholesale business growth.
I love it. If anyone wants to know, have a look down below. I'll drop all the links down below so you can get them. Eric, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. I know we've been like rearranging this like non-stop, but if anyone's interested, do check out, honestly, eSellers RI. Check out Eric's content. He shares so much. And I just want to say for myself and everyone watching, thank you so much for sharing everything you've done.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tom.
Take care. Bye-bye.